Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to Secure SAP on Azure Partner Airlift. My name is Binal Pillai, and I am responsible for partner strategy and business development for security, compliance, and identity product incubation, and I lead SAP on Azure Partner Initiative worldwide. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. We have a lot of valuable information to share in the next 3 hours with a Q&A segment at the end. So I hope you will stick around till then. The goal of this partner airlift is to educate partners on how Microsoft can secure SAP on Azure migration and modernization opportunities by leveraging our native Azure security controls that includes this Sentinel threat monitoring capability designed for SAP system, and how partners can build services and accelerate go-to-market with sell-with activities with Microsoft. In the next slide, we have an interesting agenda that to share with you. In the first 30 minutes, I and Yoav will walk you through the partner opportunities overview from the native Azure security controls that includes Microsoft Sentinel threat monitoring for SAP. In this session, we will cover the potential scenario that partners can monetize SAP on Azure opportunity from an incremental partner revenue perspective and also for a long-term growth potential. We do have partner success story video from Erwado Systems, Germany, where the partner adopted Microsoft Sentinel threat monitoring Docker for their SAP production environment. Please stay tuned to watch the video to learn from your counterpart. In our second session, Evren and Richard will deep dive into native Azure security control that's relevant for SAP system. They will also cover a layered approach for end-to-end security for any SAP deployment. In our third session, Sarah and Takayuki will deep dive into Sentinel threat monitoring for SAP product capabilities with a product demo and walk you through the details to set up and configure Sentinel with relevant SAP log file. This session will help partners to accelerate your adoption of Sentinel threat monitoring for SAP. In addition, we have Aaron Hillard from Microsoft Digital Platform Engineering team will share learning and best practices from SAP on Azure deployment. We do have 15 minutes Q&A, including speakers. We have a panel standby to answer your question. This event is brought to you by Microsoft Security Partner Development Team, and we would like to appreciate everyone adhering to our Microsoft Digital Event Code of Conduct, both on the screen as well as on the chat window. So let's start with our first session, that is partner opportunity. And before I go there, from how to engage with the session, please come to the chat window if you have any questions. And like I said, we have a panel there to answer your question, and we will try to answer as much as we could. And recording will be provided as a post-event follow-up. And the one last thing is, if your colleague is not able to join in this meeting, they can still register to this event so that they will receive the follow-up email or communication from us with the material that we are sharing today. So let's move on to the first session. Next slide, please. So SAP system handle extremely sensitive information. Just to give a context, 77% of world transactions are touched by an SAP system. That's why protecting SAP system from a bad actor is a top priority, not only for enterprises, but also for governments. Once the attacker is inside, there's a few controls to detect attacker's footprint. At the same time, SAP system needs more correlated information across the infrastructure and applicative layers to get a clear picture of the ground reality. Due to the breadth in the SAP system, SOC teams traditionally have very little visibility, and this leads SAP system being managed with a limited security coverage. In addition to that, a couple of recent market highlights substantiate our thinking that SAP system needs a better security coverage. One example, the US Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, issued a binding operational directive on November 2021 to compel government departments and agencies to remediate specific vulnerabilities with known exploits. According to CISA, the vulnerabilities pose a significant risk to information system that include SAP system, and that need to be remediated by May 2022. The other context I want to share with you, in Q2 2021, SAP issued a joint report with a security research firm to highlight active cyber threats targeting SAP applications. According to the report, there is conclusive evidence that attackers are actively targeting and exploiting unsecured SAP applications. The report that some of the SAP vulnerabilities being managed, weaponized in less than 72 hours from the release of SAP patches. So it shows unprotected cloud applications or installations of SAP are being discovered and compromised in less than 3 hours. This is just to give a context very much specific to the current reality where we live. Moving to the next slide, we just wanted to really touch base that the current challenges with the cloud security advantage perspective. As you consider and evaluate public cloud services, it's critical to understand the shared responsibility model and which security tasks are handled by cloud provider and which tasks are handled by customer. This is a common concept or model that every customer or partner consider for migration. The workload responsibility vary depending on whether the workload is hosted on the software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service, or in an on-premises data center. The logic is applicable for SAP system and becomes a priority for developing design principle for migrating SAP to cloud. Moving to the next slide about Azure Security. At Microsoft, we spend over $1 billion every year on research and development to secure customer organization and enable them to digitally transform without compromising productivity. We do this, our partners, technology and partnerships. What makes Microsoft so different to other cloud providers and even security providers is that we have intelligence informed by trillions of sources, so we can help customers make smarter decisions and remediate security challenges faster. With that, I want to really introduce you to the native Azure Security Control. We provide a holistic and truly approach for technology. And these are the cloud-based security controls on Azure: identity and access management, apps and data security, network security, threat protection, and security management. So let's touch base a little bit detail what exactly Azure have built into it. Moving on to next slide. I want to give an overview of the key native Azure security controls by highlighting some of the role in the broader cloud security architecture context. The good news is that you can click on the slide, please. The majority of these Azure security controls are applicable to other cloud platforms such as GCP and AWS. The native security controls provide visibility and control on internal resources, public applications, and devices. Azure Active Directory is one of the core components to centralize visibility and provide control around identity. For visibility space, there are two kinds. First one, for example, what is the security posture for dev apps? The other one is threat monitoring. Are we under attack? What has been compromised, etc. We have Azure Secure Score for governance aspect that we have, and we have Microsoft Sentinel for threat monitoring. You need a SIM to pull all raw data for meaningful analysis that you can act on quickly. It is important to highlight Microsoft investment on Azure Defender and what it does to popular Azure services like storage, SQL databases, and Kubernetes. If you look at the top left, you don't want to have your SOC operating independently out of your access control. That's where Azure Active Directory governance control comes into the picture, which is operating based on the zero trust principle. On top right, there are two primary security controls. The first one is similar to most organizations are using today on their on-premises. We call data plane security, which focuses on code in your DevOps environment to determine if the code you use for the underlying infrastructure has any flaws there. There is a lot of different components and capabilities there, including a couple of edge services around Azure DDoS, about application firewall, that attaches to Azure front door in the application gateway, as well as security in the API management gateway. On the top right, you can see a couple of frameworks. First one is Cloud Adoption Framework. If the organization focuses for a full migration to cloud or hybrid journey, you need to build a big picture across the cloud, enterprises, and all workloads. The second one is a well-architectured framework. It's a workload focus. How do I manage, secure, and optimize specific workload in the cloud? See, the idea is to provide an overview of native control capabilities from a high-level standpoint so that you can leverage the appropriate one for your SAP customer. Later, Evren and Richard will go deeper on each native security control with a specific context to SAP in the next session. So now let me pass over to Yoav to provide an overview of SAP threat monitoring with Microsoft Sentinel. Before you start, Yoav, please introduce yourself.
So hi everyone. First, thank you, Binel, for introducing me, for the great overview. Yoav from Azure Sentinel, the product team, product management. Let's start, right? Let's go directly to the point. So I want to share a little bit of the reasons of why we started to protect SAP applications and what drove us to this decision. Remember that after this session, you will also have a deep dive into the solution, hands-on demos and everything, and I will touch a little bit of the high-level points in regards to what we do. So at first, when we started, we surveyed our customers that were interested in SAP security. This requirement came for us, from customers to us. They asked us if we can do something about SAP because of the fact that the data there is so sensitive. And we found out that most of the customers are not storing any SAP raw logs, not confident about the security measures on SAP, and are not aware of any security products implemented of their implementation in their organization or for SAP at all. And some of them are even, even if sometimes they don't know if they have a product to protect SAP, but in many cases, they also clearly state that they don't have a solution, a security solution to cover the SAP application layers in their organization. Moving on. So when we came to the point of deciding what do we want to have in the solution, it was important for us first to cover all the different layers of an SAP deployment. SAP is deployed on servers, on IaaS. It leverages storage, network, and of course the operating system layer. And it was important for us that we'll have a solution that covers that, plus, of course, the SAP application layer, the transactional data from SAP, which provides us insights to what's going on within the system. In addition to that, we wanted to allow the correlation of the SAP data with other data across the enterprise. We found that there are many customers lack that total visibility to the kill chain. An attack can start with a phishing email. It doesn't have to be particular to SAP. Eventually, we want to know how it started, correlate, triage the attack, understand the blast radius of the attack, and connect all the dots. So for us, it was very important that the solution will be thorough and look at the entire kill chain together with what's actually happening within SAP itself. Looking at the deployment, we want to allow flexibility. SAP is a sensitive workload. Customers were asking us, how can we traverse a firewall? What can we do about the firewalls that surround SAP? It is isolated in many cases in different networks. In many cases, we found out that SAP deployments were on-prem, and we wanted to also protect on-prem or even SAP in other clouds. So it was important for us to deliver a component that can run everywhere and does not require to open a port from Azure to the SAP system itself, but it can be on the same network together with SAP, send the data to Azure on one hand and connect to SAP from the other hand and get the data out there, and provide threat detections out of the box to speed up the adoptions. Customers were asking us, how can we even get started on SAP security? So it was important for us, other than providing the data, also provide the quick start, the ability to gain security value quickly from the solution. And most important, SAP is a platform, and it allows deep customization and coding, and every SAP system is a bit different than the other, and also the alerting and the security should be, and that's why it's completely open for customization. And looking at the partner angle of it, it's also open for building new use cases and utilizing the data, creating your own IP, your own special source when delivering a service to a customer. Well, moving on to what we've delivered, and I'm not going to cover that deeply in this session. Rich NetWeaver data connector, we connect to SAP NetWeaver systems. We use that by leveraging RFC, remote function calls, and deployed on top. The deployment vehicle is a Docker container that you can deploy on a VM or on a Kubernetes cluster, on-prem, or anywhere that you seek to deploy. Of course, we also have all the underlying infrastructure connectors. It's a natural capability of Sentinel. And again, in the next sessions, we'll cover the capabilities all around for Sentinel and for SAP specifically. And of course, deliver built-in security content, integration to our UEBA insights. And we just got started on providing the ability to secure an SAP system, make it accessible to the security team, and being able to implement the solution quick, because you're already getting the templates, the detections out of the box, but in a way that you can customize, understand, completely read, in a way, open source detections that you can modify, KQLs, and so on. Moving on. So what I want you to take from this slide is essentially looking at SAP on Azure. I mean, customers are moving SAP to the cloud. They want to run it in the cloud environment. It makes a lot of sense, especially now when the workforce is working remotely, and that needs to be enabled, and the cloud is an enabler of that. And some customers are thinking whether they want to deploy SAP on one cloud over the other. Microsoft Azure is the only cloud service provider that protects SAP on the application level, that is able to look at the data at the application level and provide a security solution that is tailored to protect SAP systems. Let's move to the next slide. So we're a native service, a cloud solution, autoscale, PageG, I mean, all the good things about the cloud solution. You can correlate and triage an attack on SAP, knowing that just having the signal from the SAP, having something in the log may not mean enough, but having that together with other signals coming from the infrastructure, that's how you will triage an attack and also be able to know how it got there. And that's one of the main advantages of using a SIEM like Sentinel with SAP security capabilities in comparison to a point solution that protects only SAP. It's fully customizable with out-of-the-box turnkey security content, with detection, visualizations, workbooks, watch lists, and insight, UEBA insight integration. And UEBA integration is something that we plan to continue and invest in. And of course, some customers are protecting SAP by looking into SAP directly. And with the approach that we take to continuously get the logs from the SAP system and put it in Sentinel, it is not possible to delete for the attacker, even if he's gaining high privilege on the SAP system, to delete the logs that we already have, because it is replicated. And that's very important to prevent defense evasions, trying to investigate a breach where the attacker could have wiped the logs from the system. A little bit on GA dates. The expected date is the 21 of April 22, and it will be followed by certification of the solution. Of course, this is a plan. Okay, it's something that that we want to achieve. It can change like anything that is a plan, and it can also change without prior notice. It's important to say that when we share something like that. The preview pricing is by the gigabyte. Usually we price, until now we price all the Sentinel services according to the amount of data that you ingest. This is the preview pricing for the solution, for the SAP solution. We do reserve the right to change that for GA, although we haven't done so in the past. And it's also important to know that we saw dozens of gig per day from a production system to kind of get a hang of the costs.
All right.
So, Benil, I want to bring the presenter role back to you, and I want to thank you all for joining us. And I hope that the sessions will be helpful and that you'll have that we'll do more together in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yoav. So in the next a few slides, I want to really introduce you to the partner opportunity. As you know, we shared the high-level overview of native security control relevant for SAP, and the next couple of sessions will deep dive into the product capabilities. However, we want to share how do we envision the partner opportunities that helps you to make more services revenue. We envision two types of opportunities for our partners. The first one is migration opportunity, means migrating SAP to Azure as their cloud platform or take them to a hybrid model. The other one is modernization opportunity, means your SAP customer is already using Microsoft Sentinel as their SIEM, even though customer's cloud platform is AWS or GCP. In this case, you take the customer to next level by showing the potential value that Azure offers for solving long-standing information security challenges, for example, related to DDoS protection or threat monitoring. We have three customer scenarios to qualify both opportunities. The first one scenario is SAP on Azure migration, which could be Azure compete scenario versus GCP or AWS. In this scenario, we want native security controls to be incorporated into your standard migration blueprint or architecture so that you can lead with security conversation to differentiate Azure value proposition. By doing this, security becomes a priority for migration. The second scenario is where your SAP customer is an on-prem customer or still using other cloud platform, and your customer leverage Microsoft Sentinel as a SIEM solution to monitor their threat effectively from the SOC standpoint. In this case, you can introduce Sentinel SAP Docker to the customer, secure customer mindshare on the value of Microsoft Sentinel for SAP for an effective threat monitoring, and eventually migrate them to Azure. This scenario offers both migration as well as modernization opportunity for partners. The third scenario is a modernization play. Your SAP customer is already on Azure platform and perhaps not aware of Microsoft Sentinel capability for SAP threat monitoring. Then it would be an opportunity for you to upsell the customer to leverage Sentinel connector for SAP and develop a meaningful threat monitoring solution for data analysis. This is a low-hanging fruit for partners to help customer maximize the value of their investment on Microsoft product by turning on Sentinel and get the data from SAP logs. So we have three types of partner services that we believe that partner can really make incremental revenue. And one is advisory, the other one is implementation, and third one is managed services. Advisory services is relevant for migration opportunities, especially to help customer to determine and decide the required native security control based on your migration blueprint. Implementation service is required for both migration and modernization opportunities, for example, installation and deployment of various security controls. Many of the native control becomes the scope for managed services, for sure. For example, you can integrate threat monitoring with your MDR, managed detection and response services, and provide that as a package to your SAP customer. Moving on to the next slide, we have an architecture framework which we created, a security architecture framework for partners to determine the scope of the services offering or capabilities that you want to develop that can leverage with a native security control. This will help you to identify an ideal grouping of components for each native control, for example, for infrastructure as a service type or SaaS or on-prem. And I understand some of you manage your SAP on other cloud platform. Some of the native security control from Azure can be best fit to serve your customer even they are on the other cloud platform. So our kind suggestion is use the framework to map out Microsoft native security control and third-party options to ensure end-to-end security for SAP system. That's the way we need to lean in. How to really provide an end-to-end security with all relevant component and an investment that we made in the Azure from a cloud security standpoint. Now, I wanted to move on to the next section where I want to introduce one of our partner, Erwado system. There is a video recorded, and Erwado is a partner from Germany, and they have adopted Microsoft Sentinel threat monitoring Docker for SAP in their production environment. So before playing the video, big thanks to Andreas Nolte, head of cybersecurity Erwado system, for sharing their success story with this global partner community. So appreciate if we can play the video now.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Andreas Nolte. I'm heading the cybersecurity services unit of Erwado Systems. We are an infrastructure outsourcing provider from Germany, and we empower digital leaders. Basically, what this means that we help our clients to merge to the cloud, and of course, in these days, this means that you have to make sure that adequate cybersecurity is set up accordingly, including the needed services. And yeah, that's what I do. If you think about cybersecurity in an enterprise, then the key subject is that you have to protect the business. Yeah, so it's not in essence about technology or skills and or fancy hacking or anything, but it is how do you protect your business? And if you think about that in almost any significant enterprise, you're talking about SAP systems supporting these business processes, yeah, in many ways, yeah, from production to finance to logistics, you name it. So basically, speaking about this is true for us as Erwado Systems ourselves. Yeah, we base significant parts of our internal services and capabilities on SAP, so it is essential to keep the business up and running. And speaking about my role to really helping our clients to protect their business, yeah, it is essential, you know, as we're also an SAP partner, yeah, to have services available to properly protect those business processes which are based on SAP. And therefore, for us, when I got first notice in the private preview program about the SAP Sentinel connector, I was really immediately interested and said, this is exactly what we need to get visibility into our core systems, yeah, and support our SOC team with information from these a bit special, you know, SAP worlds, yeah, and get that integrated in the overall visibility. So this is why we engaged for ourselves. And as I said, you know, my main job sort of is not internal security, it's security services. And I'm completely convinced that this is an essential service that we need to offer for our customers to be successful and protect their business in these challenging time, yeah, with cybercrime raising all the time. Yeah, so that's why we did it. The key benefit is that we finally got visibility into the threat landscape for our critical SAP systems supporting our business. And this is also the key benefit for our customers, to integrate the signals and telemetry for these critical components also in the overall detection setup and coverage, technically and also organizationally, bridging the gap between the more focused specialized SAP teams and the security teams, as the general security operations people really benefit from this ease of integration and being able to make sense of these special alert types. If you think about protecting SAP systems as a whole, then I like to think about three main usage types that you need to think about, and which is on one hand side, the in what I call intranet scenarios, which is your employees talking to the SAP systems. The second one is what I call internet scenario, like anybody from the internet connecting to the SAP system and working with that. And the third one is integration, today always with in many cases with API connectivities to your SAP systems. And all these areas and threat types, including DDoS, etc., they need to be also addressed as the overall package, and together also have the telemetry of these different elements in one place, which would be Sentinel, together with the SAP connector, but also with the native controls from the Cloud Defender and other, as I said, DDoS protection, others, to really get full visibility of the threats and a way to correlate all the different data, telemetry, and signals and alerts, and give the analyst a very good basis to really chase up the bad guys and get problems fixed. So thanks everybody for having me today, and I wish you all a great ongoing event with probably lots of things to learn.
Once again, thanks to Andreas and Erwado System for sharing their success story with us. So the next section is Evren and Richard will deep dive into native Azure Security control that is relevant for SAP system. This will also cover a layered approach for end-to-end security for any SAP deployment. Over to you, Richard.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Benil and Yoav, for that fantastic start to this session. So in the next session, I'm going to be covering with my friend here, Evren. We're going to talk about some of the more detailed aspects of what does it take to actually protect SAP on Azure. I'm Richard Diver. I'm the Technical Business Development Manager inside of the Security Partner Development Team. And I have the fun of teaching partners all of the security components that we need to learn to get this going. Evren, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everybody. My name is Evren Bayrok from Microsoft Partner Success Team Organization. I am Microsoft certified across the entire Azure portfolio, and I also call out that I'm certified across all the Azure Security Engineering solutions, as well as CompTI Security Engineer and Penetration Test Engineer, and I'm all certified across the board on the CompTI as well. So I'm happy to be here, and so we're gonna be actually just covering a lot of good things for you today.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about this one. So the agenda for today, for this next 40 minutes, you're going to learn all about the core cloud-based security controls from Microsoft, so that you can, whether you are migrating or if you're trying to modernize an existing implementation, getting SAP running on Azure can be a solution in a box approach. So regardless of whatever else the customer is using on premises or anywhere else, you can, with the solutions we're going to show you today, build out an entire solution for SAP on Azure purely with Microsoft. There are options, and we'll show you those as well, where you can augment with other things. We want to make sure you don't miss anything and that you can provide the customer the complete end-to-end security you need. So that's what we're going to cover today. Some of the challenges that you'll see with securing SAP that our customers are really starting to be aware of, and it's not recent, it's been happening for some time now. You can see from this list that we provided here, a very quick list, but 50,000 companies we found from an assessment that they've been exposed to some kind of business critical SAP systems. That could be insider, it could be somebody who has actual access to SAP, or it could be some kind of misconfiguration that allowed somebody to get into the infrastructure of SAP. And that's one of the problems here, is that how do you ensure you've got this zero trust approach and layered, multi-faceted attack approach to make sure that your SAP is running optimally and most secure as it can wherever it's running. But ideally, get it into Azure, because we think you'll find it much easier to offer a secure SAP on there. We'll go through some of those core levels of data access and controls as far as Azure is concerned. So everyone, I'm going to hand it to you because I know you've got a lot to cover and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So Why don't you walk us through some of those layers that we should be thinking about?
So basically, as Richard actually just suggested, that we're going to be covering the Azure native security controls. The idea is that we can provide you with all these tools and controls that we can ensure zero trust security functions and parameters, which are adapted by our partners to help customers augment their SAP and non-SAP workloads on Azure. So basically, the overall presentation today is going to be giving you a lot of good information about what Microsoft has around security controls, which actually just starts with the Azure networking services for SAP. And we would also say for non-SAP, because everything is going to be applicable for the entire workload a customer is going to run on Azure. So when we're looking at this slide, that we are seeing that Azure networking services, that we are seeing products in 4 pillars. So these are connect, monitor, protect, and deliver. So protect is what we are trying to achieve for security for the starting point. So before I drill down into the protect, I just need to mention that we are helping our enterprise customers and small, medium, large, any customer understand Azure Virtual Network concept. So basically, as many of you might already know, Azure Virtual Network is actually the core component of the Microsoft Azure Security, as it is providing a logical, isolated, and secure network boundary inside Microsoft Azure. As more and more workloads start to get deployed in Azure Virtual Networks, enabling network connectivity across them starts to become a challenge for some enterprises. So there are multiple options to actually just address these. And then the virtual network concept is the technology backbone that Microsoft leverages to establish everything in and around it. So basically, when we're looking at the challenges of customers when they are deploying SAP or non-SAP on Azure, there are multiple options to address those challenges. So these options include, like as I said, the virtual network, and then virtual network peering, using VPN gateway between 2 virtual networks. So as we are using VNets, there are many areas which Microsoft helps our customers and our partners and partner ecosystem is helping our customers. So one of the areas is the VNet connectivity challenges. So Microsoft has tools and technologies to provide all the help that is needed to address these challenges. For example, to address common VNet connectivity challenges, a pattern has evolved over the years. So this pattern is the hub and spoke network topology in Azure. Basically, what exactly hub and spoke network topology is, that it is the pattern bringing multiple benefits and simplifies that network connectivity in Azure. So Azure has also another service called Azure Virtual WAN solution, which is on the slide. So it is providing, it is pretty much like the managed hub and spoke topology, facilitating a any-to-any connectivity for the customers. So this is the networking service that is bringing many networking, security, and routing functionalities together to provide a single operational interface for the end customers. So often referred as network as a service by many of Microsoft customers. So these functionalities include branch connectivity via connectivity automation from virtual WAN or wide area network, partner devices such as software-defined wide area network or SD-WAN or VPN CPE, site-to-site VPN connectivity, remote user VPN, point-to-site connectivity, private express route connectivity. So also like intra-cloud connectivity for transitive connectivity for virtual networks is also another one. And then of course that we have the VPN express route interconnectivity, routing, Azure firewall, and encryption for private connectivity. I'm actually just going to be covering all these. This is just like to give an idea on what Microsoft has around networking that we can stem from this, and then we absolutely can help any customer of any scale today with their security and networking requirements. But the bottom line of the slide is to understand that Microsoft does not have only one solution to provide to the customers. Basically, we are using a bunch of technologies together sometimes to address any of the challenges of any customer. For example, I'm just giving an example that a customer might be looking at some compliance requirements fulfillment, such as verifying the source IP address. So then they might be looking at their compliance team is not going to necessarily accept any kind of a solution without they really just name the source IP. So in a situation like that, we might be looking at a solution like Azure Firewall and Azure Application Gateway together to use the route tables in between, side by side, to verify the source IP address. I'm just like, coming up with simple scenario, which is actually something important. So what a partner can do in a situation like that is basically just using two different services and then provide the support to the customer. Like the NAT gateway, for example, network address translation. If the customer is requiring something like an explicit networking, explicit SNetting, so then you definitely can use NAT gateway in a custom solution if you need to. So if a client is looking at a solution where they would like to just create the hub VNet and configure it with the VPN gateway, and if they want to do anything around IPsec over express route, there you go, that we can help those customers with IPsec over express route. Then we can define the VPN gateway subnet. Then you can then create the VPN client root certificate if it is needed, and then configure it with the VPN gateway. So then if a client requires something like assigning a public IP address and then subnet, and then we can go ahead and just create the production spoke VNet and then assign those subnets for app and database servers based on the customer's requirement. So another opportunity for our partners is the intent of this overall presentations and then this technical enablement is to help you understand all these technologies can definitely define a solution for the end customer. So, Taka and Yodav, they're going to be talking about Azure Sentinel in a deep dive. So we absolutely can use it for a really great SIEM solution, for example. But in the same time, these are all the rules, the functionalities that we can definitely just provide to the end customers. Look, let me just select something there from this list. Traffic Manager. What it does, it is very simple. It is a DNS-based routing, but Traffic Manager is also having some limitations. So we need to know all these limitations as well. For example, we cannot guarantee that geographic region we infer from the source IP address of a DNS query will always correspond to the user's location due to many reasons. So Microsoft is definitely using an internal map to do the IP address to geographic region translation. While this map is being validated and updated on an ongoing basis, we are also increasing its accuracy. So understanding what the customer's requirements are around it is really going to help you define the overall solution. So we are ready to help you to define all those requirements from the customer, understand their requirements. If it is something around a simple load balancer, we absolutely can help any customer today at any scale. We can automatically just assign those, load balancers as we just did the announcement on that. For instance, if a client is looking at allowing the load balancers to do the load balances across the services, We can do it on multiple ports, multiple IP addresses, or we can even do it both if it is needed. So basically the point on this is that just looking at the traffic manager, looking at Azure Load Balancer, these are all standalone solutions, but when we are looking at the customization for any customer, it is going to make a lot of sense to actually just use these technologies every day. For instance, if a client is looking at standard load balancer from load balancing perspective, so we can use the public and internal load balancer. So these are definitions actually to load balance flows across a set of VMs for SAP and non-SAP. So if a customer wants to achieve HA with a single front end by configuring the load balancer to use a load balancing rule with HA port with a single front end by setting up that, floating IP. So then we're going to be actually just advising you to just select it to enable to actually just make it work. So then, because technology is growing so fast, so like looking at the load balancer, so then the question comes to mind, like what was going on before that, right? Then before the standard load balancer, the backend application servers, like the SAP application servers, were not associated. They were associated with the VM network interface cards before. So now the good thing is we absolutely can use the standard SKU load balancer to achieve this IP-based load balancer using PowerShell and also CLI, which was announced very recently. I think it was a couple of days ago. So basically, we got lots of functionalities and lots of technologies. I'm actually just going to be touching more on the cloud-based security controls for SAP on Azure, specifically to identity access management, application and data security, network security, threat protection, security management. So all these components that you see here is going to make a lot of sense to use it for any customer today. So like, I'm just going to be just giving one more example, DDoS. So DDoS standard, why exactly it is needed, I'm going to be speaking in the next section, but it is definitely protecting all the resources deployed into a virtual network, which is the isolated space, as I mentioned. It is very important. Again, virtual network is the area where we are building SAP and non-SAP in and outside. So we need to make sure that every subscription in every region under the same tenant is going to be protected. So DDoS protection is implemented on the platform side for the storage service. So then there's no need for customer to take care of the DDoS attack, because as you are our partner, you will be using DDoS, enabling it, and then there's not going to be any need for your customer to take care of the DDoS attack. So then if the customer wants to protect the IS workloads to be protected based on their day-to-day network traffic, then as you are our partner, you will need to utilize the DDoS standard protection, as it absolutely uses dedicated monitoring and machine learning algorithms to configure the DDoS protection policies, which are 100% tuned to the virtual network. Again, this virtual network, topic just comes a lot, and then I'm absolutely just going to be using it again in the next slides. So this is some overview again. It is not everything, but it is to summarize what we have on the networking piece for the networking services for SAP. But when we are looking at the cloud-based security controls for SAP on Azure, it is a little bit more deep dive, because within each solution area that you guys see here, your end customers, our partners' customers, need to manage multiple security categories to effectively reduce the risk for the SAP investments, the risk to their SAP investments on Azure. So the average enterprise employs today, I will say 70+ vendors for their security, all the towers. So managing that complexity can lead to gaps in coverage. So there's no question about that. You cannot have one team to go ahead and just cover every single area here. They're going to have limited visibility. They're going to have fragmented experiences. In contrast, Microsoft offers a unified approach that leverages both best-in-class depth and breadth for the security. How? By bringing this categories that you see here together into one solution that natively integrates individual layers of security, so that your organizations or your customers can improve end user experiences, decrease security operational inefficiencies, and reduce the risk of costly data breaches. So how are we going to do that? This is something that, of course, is just going to come to your mind. Our identity and access management tools, the first one. Why it is needed? It is because it is enabling your customers to take an identity-based approach to security and establish truly conditional access policies, which is the reason why the cloud DMZ or cloud demilitarized zone concept actually was born, starting with identity access management. So everything that you see here is the layer approach. Basically, we're going to be starting with identity access, application and data security, network security, threat protection, which is going to be covered, and also the security management. So the second one, application and data security, why it is important? Because it is going to help your customers protect SAP and non-SAP applications and data, which can be integrated into SAP or non-SAP, as it is going to move around. Now the question is, how is Microsoft helping when the data is moving around? It is transport layer socket. It is industry known, industry accepted, TLS security. So Microsoft takes care of the data in transit. Is Microsoft also taking care of when the data is there at rest? Yes, absolutely. It is going to be AES 256. If the customer wants to enable Azure Key Vault and then they want to go like 248, 2048, and more than that, like 3048, absolutely can do. Microsoft is going to give all these tools and functionalities to make sure that when the data is there or when the storage account is created, AES 256 is going to be provided. But there are lots of things that you guys can actually just like, do more, like Azure data encryption on top, for example, or IPsec over Express Route for the traffic filtering, or Azure Application Gateway and Azure Firewall side by side, and using one NSG rule and just like expose it to all the subnets is another one. There are many of these. So again, I'm just going to be covering these. So the network security is very important, as it was actually the start of the slide. The third slide was actually network security and all the components that I actually just mentioned, like traffic manager, the NSGs, and I'm just going to be going through every single one of them. So, and again, in the end of this session, Richard Diver and myself, for our part, we're going to be absolutely just ready to help you with anything that you need here. If you want me to demo any of these things at a later stage, just reach out to me. So we're going to be also providing you with our contact information. The network security. What we are telling our partners is that establish secure connections to and within Azure using virtual networks. As I said, I was going to use this word, and network security groups. We also say leverage VPN and Express Route for dedicated security, dedicated traffic, establishment. We are advising our partners to make sure that they protect and ensure availability of the applications and protect against network layer threats with services like Web Application Firewall, Azure DDoS protection. It is very important to also just consider technologies under the threat protection, because it is very important to secure your customer's entire organization from threats with Microsoft Sentinel, which is going to be perfectly covered by two great people today. And then the demo is going to really just amaze you. And then they're going to be given more information about what exactly it is a cloud native SIEM, which is security information and events management tool from Microsoft that scales to the needs of your customer and can be addressed from anywhere, is going to be covered. And security management, as important as any other components here, as we are assessing security state continuously within Azure. It is one of the key value propositions, especially as cloud workloads change dynamically. Azure, Microsoft Defender for Cloud is helping you monitor secure state of Azure resources and hybrid workloads. It is going to provide a dynamic secure scorecard and also recommendations to improve the security. Is very important in a centralized console, making all the security management easier across different resources for your end customers. Basically, you're gonna have access to this. You're gonna be able to use it. So then you're gonna also have technologies and some enablements like advanced threat protection across many services like Microsoft Azure virtual machines like M-series VMs, E-series VMs, for example, that you're gonna have the, like let's say that the customer is running SAP on Azure SQL. Like I'm just giving an example. You're gonna have the visibility on that. You're gonna have visibility on the SAP HANA database, the storage containers on VMs, if it is for the non-SAP, for example. So it is gonna be backed by Microsoft Intelligent Graph, the security management, and everything the Defender is actually just built on. Basically, you're gonna be able to detect and respond to threats quickly across any services, and lately now for SAP, which is very awesome, as it wasn't available before. And then the product group worked on that. They made the product robust. So I can't wait to see the demo myself because I saw it already. And then this is really just going to be fantastic. Speaking of the tools, again, all the details. So basically, defense in depth, right? Everything is actually just built on. So what Microsoft is doing on this space. So the concept of DMZ, which I mentioned in the onset of this presentation, is a layered network security approach to minimize the attack footprint of any application today. So DMZ architecture can be comprised with either 2 layers or 3 layers of security, and it depends on the customer. So Azure network traffic to and from resources, again, in a virtual network using network security groups is the core component of it, and network virtual appliances if it is needed. And when we're looking at cloud DMZ, it is really enriched with Microsoft native solutions. So again, I'll go through those solutions in detail, as Binil mentioned. So Richard mentioned about the zero trust security. It is providing a modern security framework to manage the complexity of today's organizations, any organization. So a holistic approach to zero trust should extend throughout the entire digital estate of the customer, actually, because it serves as an integrated security philosophy and end-to-end strategy. So you can do this by implementing zero trust controls and technologies across foundational elements, which I'm going to be covering: identities and devices, data, applications, infrastructure, and network. And then I'm also going to be talking about policy-driven access control. So why it is important is each and every service is an opportunity for our partner to enable, to position at their customer side, like identities, whether they represent people, services, or IoT devices. It defines the zero trust control plane's bottom part. So when an identity attempts to access a resource, we need to verify that identity with strong authentication and ensure access is compliant and typical for that identity, and is following least privilege access principles. It's very important as any other component that you see here, but it is something that 99% of customers are looking at, how they can actually enable robust TLS included and then SSL included identity access management. So then this also aligns with the devices, because once an identity has been granted access to a resource, data can flow to a variety of different devices. So from IoT devices to smartphones, bring your own device to partner managed devices, and on-premises workloads to cloud hosted servers, it is just going to flow all around. So this diversity creates a massive attack surface area for any attacker. So it requires that Microsoft helps our partners, and we monitor and enforce device health and compliance for secure access. Also for the data, it is ultimately security teams are focused on protecting data. So where possible, we always just recommend our partners to leverage that the data should remain safe, even if it is leaving the devices, application, SAP or non-SAP infrastructure, and networks the organizations control. So data should be classified, labeled, and encrypted, and access restricted based on those attributes. Always just, it's supposed to be enabled. So these are all the components that needs to actually just have customizations based on the customer's requirements. Even on the application, applications and API provide an interface by which data is consumed. So they may be legacy on premises or lift and shifted to cloud workloads or modern SaaS application controls or technologies. These should all apply to discover shadow IT and ensure appropriate in-app permissions and gate access, based on real-time analytics should be enabled on top every time the customer is deploying SAP. Again, infrastructure, whether on-premises server or Azure VMs or even containers, microservices such as Logic App, for example, represents a critical threat vector for any customer today. So we are advising our partners to do assessment for version configuration, just-in-time access to hardened defense, and use telemetry to detect attacks and anomalies and automatically block and flag risky behavior and take protective actions. So for the networking part, again, all data is ultimately accessed over network infrastructure. So networking controls can provide critical in-pipe controls to enhance visibility and help prevent attackers from moving laterally across the network. So these networks should be segmented, including deeper in-network, like micro-segmentation, leveraging subnetting, and also real-time threat protection with the Microsoft Sentinel, and end-to-end encryption using Azure data encryption or transparent data encryption, or it can be anything that actually customer can enable, like the SAP data custodian, for example, if they need to. Microsoft has all these tools, and also policy-driven access is something that needs to be considered by our partners, as modern microsegmentation means more than networks, of course, that it is all cloud. So it requires that we all gate access based on role, location, behavior patterns, data sensitivity, SAP application, device security. It's important to ensure that all policies are automatically enforced at the time of access and continuously throughout the session where possible. So this slide is again talking about simplification of the security management with Azure services. But what is the partner opportunity? The partner opportunity is actually just taking place based on the customer requirements. Like I mentioned about the DDoS attacks. Why it is important? What is the opportunity for the partner here? Let's see that what customers' concerns are. Like, because DDoS attacks, which is the distributed denial of service, these are classified in 3 categories today: volumetric, protocol, and application layer attacks. There is no customer so far who has not mentioned about their fear for the DDoS attacks, and Microsoft has a solution for this. Because volumetric and protocol attacks are also referred as OSI layer 3 and 4 attacks. So although that volumetric attacks gets a lot of attention, we are seeing multi-vector attacks are growing, and it's the concern of customers. So DDoS protection, defense against volumetric and protocol attacks, resource and application layer attacks, exploit vulnerabilities in the application. It is very important and very big concern for the customer. So what we are saying, in order to defend against application layer attacks, we recommend our partners enable web application firewall for that part. However, for anything around the DDoS, like the brute force attacks, we are absolutely advising our partners to leverage it, because most of the time customers who like to secure their SAP workloads overlook very standard solutions which are available by Microsoft, and Azure DDoS standard is one of many services that we provide. So just looking at a few examples like the GRE, for example. So what is GRE? It is something that actually just comes all the time from customers. Like, it might be technical, it might be business. They know about it. It is the generic routing encapsulation, because it is used when the IP packets need to be sent from one network to another. So without being parsed or treated like a, IP packets by any intervening router. So, however, they know that this is not necessarily secure. So they know that it doesn't provide encryption by default, because it's a very old technology still used. So what they say, They would like to have something which they can actually just like, provide them with the, Pink Floyd, for example. It actually just sounds like Pink Floyd, but no, Pink Floyd. It is known as the ICMP tool. It's a very common DDoS attack in which an attacker takes down the backend server by overwhelming it with ICMP. We call it like echo requests, and we also call them pings. So Microsoft is now the solution for that. Basically, Azure DDoS is protecting the customers' investment against the brute force attacks, because the benefits of the Azure DDoS in that context is not only protection against the denial of service attacks, but also Azure DDoS standard is known to protect the application gateway, for example, for layer 7 with WAF, which distributes the traffic to on-premises, published application servers, and on-premises application servers would only accept the network traffic from application gateway IP ranges. So what is going to protect the Azure application gateway and Azure firewall? It is going to be the DDoS. Basically, it is not only going to be protecting the customer against the brute force attacks, but also going to be protecting the other investments, such as like the Azure application gateway and Azure firewall. Why? It is important because if the customer has the Azure firewall, it is going to protect the non-web applications like the FTP. So simplified configuration immediately protects all the resources on a virtual network as soon as DDoS protection standard is enabled. So when the customer has it, it is enabled automatically. So there's not going to be any intervention or user definition. So basically DDoS standard instantly and automatically mitigates the attack. So once it is detected, the attack is going to be eliminated. So the good point that I would like to make here, on top of everything that I actually just mentioned about the DDoS, it is something that every single partner of Microsoft needs to know, because we offer unlimited cost credits for scaling out resources in the event of an attack. What it means is that no other DDoS protection provider today offers 99.99% SLA guarantee and 100% cost protection for entire customer tenant at a price which I cannot call out right now because I don't know what the environment is going to look like, at a very good price for the customer to leverage. So basically, if this return on investment does not resonate with the customer, so if their resources are hosted on Azure, so they will already get Azure DDoS Basic, which protects all Azure resources by default, but it is still not going to be providing them with the SLA. So most of the time they say, hey, I have the Azure Basic level. What is the opportunity for me as a partner? Then the answer will be Azure Basic level is the infrastructure protection based on the Azure region and data center traffic volume and scale of Azure, like, PaaS services. It ensures that like those services availability is not impacted, but it is not guaranteeing that a customer's applications availability may not be impacted. We don't guarantee that with the basic. And then the standard actually just comes in place. Why? It is based on the traffic income into the SAP application and the scale of the application. Basically, it is going to scale automatically. It is going to be also protected via SLA. Basically, is the ensuring the availability of it by 99.99% SLA. The opportunity for our partner is just enabling it, and then you don't need to intervene. You don't need to do anything on top. So customer is going to be leveraging it.
Hey,
so that's one is that Azure Firewall. Why exactly it is important?
Hey, everyone, can I just interrupt you, Emperor?
Yeah.
I just want to give you a break there, just so you've been talking to us, giving us some fantastic information for a long time. We've got about 5 minutes left, and there's been some really good conversation happening in the chat window. We've got a lot of questions coming in. And one of the things I wanted to call out is that, yes, you will get the slides. Yes, these are being recorded. There's a lot of information that everyone's handing over, which is fantastic. One of the things is about whether this will work, whether we're on Azure or not on Azure. And to make that a summary, some of the things you can see that everyone's bringing out here is things like DDoS and firewall. These are workloads that are only going to work when you bring the SAP service to Azure. And that's what we're talking about today, is helping you, encourage you to get your customers to bring their workloads on SAP on Azure, because that's where we believe we can give the thorough end-to-end security all in. Now, if you have a customer that's migrating and they're halfway between the two, yes, a lot of our protections and our services are going to help your customer wherever SAP is running today. We encourage you to consider getting them over to Azure so you can throw everything at security from a layered perspective. Everyone, as I said, we've got a Q&A session we can go into about 5 minutes over, but you've got about 5-10 minutes left, and I know we've got some fantastic slides coming up. So just to have to go through a little bit faster. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to wrap up. So basically, this is everything is going to be again available. So this is not going to cover everything in sense of like what the coverage is. Firewall, when we're looking at it, is going to be built-in high availability and auto scale, and then network application traffic filtering is going to be provided, centralized policy across VNets are provided, and then centralized logging and complete VNet protection for layer 3 and some layer 7. So when we're looking at Azure Firewall overall, it is not like the standard on-premises firewall. By default, it is going to be providing more than what the traditional firewalls are doing. For example, now we have the premium SKU for the TLS inspection. So it is going to terminate outbound and east-west TLS connection, and also is going to provide inbound TLS inspection. These are all supported. What is the opportunity for the partner? Everything that you see here. Number 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything is going to be traffic filtering, both layer 3, layer 7, centralized logging, application FQDM filtering. So when we are looking at the Azure Application Gateway, it is going to be providing everything that Azure Firewall is not doing from the layer 7 perspective. Managed network security by way of filtering both HTTPS traffic filtering, support for both SSL and TLS. It is going to be given the global redirection from one port to another port on the gateway for HTTPS redirection on a side. If a customer is leveraging Azure Application Gateway, you no longer need to worry about the scalability of it. It is going to scale around 25,000 persistent connections. So then the threat monitoring, it is going to be again covered by amazing 2 people, Yoai and Taka. So they're going to be actually just giving more on this, but I am just going to give some information, just a very few words on the Azure Microsoft Sentinel. What exactly it is going to do for you is it is a threat monitoring solution which can be deployed in one simple package that is going to include all the components, which is going to be described actually. Rich NetWeaver data connector. It is going to be given the collector, which is delivered as a Docker. That is very important, as you can deploy it anywhere in the network and integrate into NetWeaver capable systems, which the customers are leveraging. So we also have the storage, supporting different type of authorizations, which is important. Aligning with the Sentinel is it includes the shared key SaaS, Azure Active Directory with shared keys and SaaS. There are no identity information carrying with the request. For security point of view, it is something that is just going to be very important. So just to highlight on the value proposition of Microsoft Sentinel, from my perspective, is that it really is it's providing the connector tool to stream the security alerts from Microsoft Security. It used to be Microsoft Security Center. Now it is Microsoft Defender for cloud, and it is streaming the alerts from here into Sentinel. And again, then you use many workbooks like Azure Active Directory, audit logs, activity, and sign-in logs, which will provide a great insight into Azure Active Directory audit and activity, sign-in data with one workbook, so that you can use this workbook to be leveraged by security and Azure administrators. So everything that you see on left are common benefits, but you can actually just add more numbers to it. These are my and Richard's just interpretation, extrapolation into the Sentinel's core value, but it is absolutely sky is the limit here. So when we're looking at how exactly everything that I actually just mentioned works, this is the subset of a larger hub and spoke configuration. Azure DDoS, protecting against brute force attacks, Azure Firewall Layer 3, Azure Regional WAF is enabled on top in the either detection or prevention mode for Azure Application Gateway. And we have the apps on infrastructure as a service and apps on PaaS. So from the security point of view, if the customer determines that there's no need to inspect the traffic twice, then once with WAF on the application gateway and again on the firewall, then we don't necessarily need to have any of this side by side if the even customer has a third-party MVA solution to deploy. So this slide actually just pretty much shows exactly how it really works. But in summary, when we're looking at it, like think about like cloud implementation of any various networks, security tools are as modular rather than deploying a big appliance that does everything. You're provisioning and stitching together the cloud resources that Microsoft actually just provides to fulfill only the exact requirement of the workload of your customer. So we have all these tools available for you. And again, these slides are going to be provided to you. So this is a very simplified, when Richard and I were working on the slide, we just made sure that this is going to be reflecting our reference architectures from how everything just works from very simplified point of view for S4 HANA Fiori application access with Azure Firewall and Azure Application Gateway. Again, if you have any questions on this, please reach out to us. We're going to make sure that we can provide you with great insight into solutioning and also just using this as service to increase your sales opportunities within your customer environment. I would like to conclude that there is no customer, again, I have not heard any, they're not looking into Azure security, native solutions. Microsoft has all these tools and technologies to help your customers. Please leverage us, please reach out to us, and then we're gonna be very happy to actually just meet with you and then provide you with more insight. So with this, I am turning this over to Richard for conclusion.
Thank you, everyone. Again, a lot to get through. I know you've got a very passionate about this topic, and so we're open to talking to all of our partners and helping you understand this. We'll go back through each one of those in more detail, help you understand the parts you don't know. As I said at the beginning, I think that for partners, you can consider the potential of SAP running on Azure as a solution on its own. So whether your customer is using DDoS or isn't using DDoS, you can design the ideal SAP instance to run in Azure, box that up as an offering and hand that to your customers. Now, there's plenty of customers that are going to want an out-of-the-box kind of solution and a cookie-cutter approach, but having that reference architecture designs and all the information that we've shared today and we're going to share in the next sessions should really give you a good idea of what the strongest SAP implementation can look like, and then work with your customer to fine-tune where their happy factor is. So with that, please keep your questions coming in. It is live. We are going to go through the chat and we're going to answer every question that you come through with. So I'm going to hand over now to Sarah and Takayuki, who's going to show us actual demonstrations of some of the specific pieces that are very unique to Microsoft around protecting SAP.
Okay, so hello everybody. It's good to be here. My name is Sarah Young. I'm a senior program manager in the Microsoft Sentinel. Nearly said Azure Sentinel. I'm sure I will at some point during this session. I'm a senior program manager in the Microsoft Sentinel customer experience engineering team. So we help customers deploy SAP. I'm also here with Takayuki or Taka and Aaron. Do you guys want to introduce yourself before we go any further?
Thanks, Sarah. And this is Taka Oshino from SAP on Azure Customer Engine team. I'm going to speak after Sarah. So a little bit late. Happy New Year for everyone.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Aaron Hillard. I manage our SAP security team here at Microsoft. Been here at Microsoft about 21 years now, so looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
So we've got Probably we can divide this into about 3 bits the next 90 minutes or so. I'm going to give you an introduction to Sentinel and the Sentinel side of our SAP threat protection solution. Taka is then going to take over from me, and he's going to talk about actually how you install it, the changes that you need to make on the SAP side, how you configure the container, and then lastly, Aaron's going to round off our presentation by talking a bit about how we actually implemented this within Microsoft itself. So that's what we're doing as the rest of the sessions. Please ask questions in the chat because we will be answering them as we go along. For any of you who are watching this in other time zones later on, we've still got people live answering questions, so please do ask away. And with that, we'll get going. So to start with, I'll give you an introduction to Sentinel. Sentinel now has been around for, it's coming up for its, well, officially its GA date was September 2019, so it's just over, it's about 2.5 years old if you want to give it a, if you want to give it an age. It's also, but we announced it in February 2019 at RSA. I know this because I was there. Anyway, so Sentinel, the main reason we created Sentinel was to create a cloud native SIEM where you didn't have to set up lots of infrastructure, and that you'd be able to use Microsoft's expertise in the background. So you'd be able to harness the scale of cloud, so it would scale out however much you needed it to. It would get updated with new and evolving threats because we know, the threat landscape changes all the time. We also wanted to bring in, automation and AI to expedite the incident response. And of course, the whole point of this is to get ahead of attackers. Now, even if you're not focused on security, I'm sure you know that we find a way to stop attackers. They find a new way to attack us. It is sort of a ongoing and will be an ongoing thing for forever, I think. But of course, the more we can keep up with them, the better protected an enterprise will be. First of all, the idea was, of course, with cloud native, is that you don't have to have infrastructure set up or maintenance. If any of you have worked with an on-prem SIEM, by the way, I say SIEM, not SIM. That's just my accent, so apologies. If you have worked with a SIEM at all in the past, you may know that on-prem SIEMs they take a long time to set up. You have to set up your infrastructure, you have to put the licenses on, you have to set up collectors. There was actually quite a lot of setup before you would actually get anything meaningful out of them. Also, they did have, because they were built on virtual machines, they did have storage limits. So eventually it could get to a point where you had too many logs and you have to sacrifice getting rid of some logs to get in fresh ones, which depending on your what security controls you have and what regulations you're subject to, that might not be ideal. And so the nice thing is, well, you can see the figure there that Forrester reckoned that using a Sentinel as a SIEM compared to the traditional SIEM, you only pay for what you use because the charges are ingestion based. So a SIEM is, we reckon, about a cloud SIEM is probably about 48% less expensive. What people used to do on premise is they would actually throw as many logs as they possibly could at that on-premise SIEM just to get their money's worth out of it, because the more you threw at it, the more because you had a fixed cost, the more value you could get. But in fact, in terms of security operations efficiency and actually giving, not overloading your SOC analysts, that actually wasn't a great tactic a lot of the time. So the next one is around evolving threats. I mean, I could throw out our probably, most pertinent one at the moment, which is Log4j. The threat landscape is evolving constantly. And, in security operations, you need to be able to keep up with that. If there's a new attack, your attackers need to be able to your defenders need to be able to pick up on that new attack as soon as possible. Otherwise, you could have bad actors going through your environment undetected. So what we do, we also have, as we do have in many Microsoft security products, we use machine learning. It's been tested with internally in Microsoft with some of our partners. It's been written by the thousands of Microsoft security professionals we have, but we also allow Sentinel to bring in threat intelligence from other places as well. So again, if you're familiar, you can actually purchase, there are also open source threat intelligence feeds that you can bring in as well to SIEMs. Also, as you would expect, because it's a Microsoft product, we do integrate really well with our other security products. So that's defend anything that's got the word defender in, because we've just changed the name of quite a few. So it means that everything fits together nicely. Having said that, I do want to stress that if a customer doesn't use everything Microsoft for their security products, which a lot of people don't, we of course can integrate with those as well. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've had to deal with about Sentinel over the years is that you can only integrate and only bring in Microsoft products to it. Now, that's definitely not the case, because if it was, it would be a pretty rubbish SIEM, to be honest with you, because a SIEM has to take in data from all over the environment in order to be effective and give you that effective visual, that effective detection and protection across your environment. What we also try and do is expedite the investigation and response. In a SOC, one of the main KPIs that they measure is mean time to respond and mean time to close. So of course, SOC analysts are very busy people. We know there's a skill shortage in security generally, but definitely I think it's even more acute in security operations. Then we need to reduce false positives, because they will happen, it's inevitable, and we can't 100% get rid of them. But if a SOC analyst spends an hour looking at an incident that turns out to be a false positive, that's an hour they could have spent on looking at a real incident. So we try and we have various different ways of doing this, that we try and reduce those false positives so that SOC analysts only work on exactly what is actually an incident and valuable. Also, with automation, what we can do, particularly with the more straightforward incidents, is actually automate the response. So if somebody's got an account, this is a very basic example, but if someone has an account that's having some really strange login patterns, say they're logging in from lots of different places all over the world within an hour, which they couldn't possibly travel between those countries in that time, we could actually run automation that said, just block this account. Now, blocking is quite extreme. There are other things we can do as well, but it's just an example for you. And of course, as I was saying, the idea is you stay ahead of attackers, because everything changes all the time. Of course, the more up to date you are, the more likely you are to be able to effectively protect your infrastructure. There's all kinds of things here. I know we're focusing on SAP, so I won't talk about it too much. If you're interested in Sentinel to learn more, there is so much stuff online that we can point you at as well, but I know we're here mostly for SAP. But we do have a lot of customers now, just worth mentioning. We've now got over 10,000 customers. We're analyzing around 5 petabytes of data per month in Sentinel. So although it is still relatively new in the market in terms of its age, it is only 2 years old, we've had a really good uptake on it, and many folks are using it in production. I know in my team, we've doubled in size since I joined a couple of years ago, because we have so many more customers that we need to help all over the world. Yeah, I'm just going to go to the demo now, to be honest with you. I think that's way more interesting, but I'll just sort of point a couple of things out. Of course, the main way you do, again, for those of you who aren't familiar, the first thing you have to do, of course, in a SIEM is you have to collect the logs. So you have to get your log source and you have to get the logs into your SIEM. Then when the logs are in there, we can run, we call them analytics rules, but they're also more generically known as detection rules. So we will run a detection that says, you know, if you see this sort of behavior across these logs within a particular time frame, raise an incident. Then a SOC analyst can go and investigate that incident. And if that's and then if possible, we'll also do automation against it and actually automate the response to take the people out of it. And that's because people can make mistakes, but more importantly, automation is just way faster at it. And for simple everyday tasks or everyday incidents that we see regularly, it is quite possible to automate the response to that, which means for the meaty, more unusual anomalies, your SOC analyst can actually go look at it. So just talking a little bit about this in the context of SAP and Sentinel. So some of you, if you've done a bit of, some of you, I'm sure that if you're SAP folks, you're aware of this. SAP is notoriously difficult to do threat detection on. We know that there are some products out there, but they're limited. I know SAP does its own in-house product as well, but the uptake of it hasn't been amazing. And because of the way that SAP churns out logs, they are, I don't even know how to describe them, but because they're kind of not consistent in their format, just as they are, they're very difficult to put into any kind of SIEM, because a SIEM relies on the logs being consistent and coming in a relatively consistent format, so that we can write the logic to run the rules against them. Of course, an SAP is a technical system, so of course, you know, it is subject to attackers. You know, it is subject to attacks from people, and we know that because SAP can run some very critical functions, from finance to HR to whatever. Of course, it is a high value target for attackers, which is why the threat detection piece actually for SAP. Ironically, SAP is one of the least monitored things, but in fact, it's so important. It really should be monitored more. The other thing is that, yeah, it's just been traditionally very difficult, even with other SIEMs, to get these logs in. And so we know that the SAP team and the security operations team often haven't worked closely before. And of course, now with attackers being more sophisticated, I have a sticker somewhere that says that that's out of scope, said no attacker ever. And the reason for that is attackers aren't just going to target a particular system anymore. Attackers will breach something and then they will move laterally throughout the environment to find things of high value. So just having your threat detection laser focused on one product doesn't give you the overall picture anymore, which is why we have to integrate everything into a SIEM, so we've got that environment look over the top. So, as I said, SAP is becoming is a high value target. So, because of the nature of what it does, so you know, we are seeing more exploits and more attacks. Of course, finance and supply chain are critical for all organizations, I would say. So it's something that we want to avoid breaches on. So what you need to do is, you know, we need to see if there's something weird going on in SAP, or if there's a configuration made, a misconfiguration that could make it more vulnerable. You need to know about this straight away. So we need to get SAP better integrated with the security management program, as it's not been very well done in the past. We actually did, within Microsoft customers, in our private preview channel, we did a survey asking customers, you know, were they monitoring SAP, and the overwhelming response, I forget what the exact figures were. The overwhelming response was they either weren't or they didn't know. And in security, in my years in security, I know that didn't know means they don't. So yeah, it's definitely definitely an issue, or a challenge, I should say. But you know, look, I don't need to tell you SAP folks this. If someone breaches an SAP system, you know, there are stolen files, disrupted supply chains, disrupted finances. And the problem with SAP and the way it's constructed is that once an attacker's in SAP, there's actually not a lot of controls to detect if they were doing like data exfiltration and pulling things out or other things. SAP's very much been built on that traditional security model of having a secure perimeter, like the castle and moat. You've got a big moat, you've got big castle walls, but if those are breached, there's not a lot of controls to detect what's going on. And that was our traditional enterprise security model as well. But now we're moving more into zero trust. So the point being that with SAP, we do need to get SAP activity correlated with other data across the organization, as I said, because an attacker will not just target SAP, and that won't be their point of entry into your environment. And traditionally, of course, SOC teams have had very, very little visibility. But coming on to the interesting bit, I'll go through the slides quickly so I can just show you it. So I can just actually show you the thing in a demo because I think it's more fun. Our SAP threat monitoring solution in Sentinel. I'm just going to talk about what you see in the Sentinel side here. Taka will talk about how you set it up on the SAP side. But basically, we provide you with a lot of out-of-the-box content. You can see here in the screenshot, we've got lots of detection rules. These have been written by our experts. So if an organization has never done threat monitoring in SAP before, which let's face it, is quite likely, we actually have these inbuilt rules. Now, I'm sure you can read them on the screen there, but we've got things like, you know, deactivating the security audit log, a sensitive privilege user change. Now, they may not be a problem, but they're definitely something that should be investigated. And of course, these are the inbuilt ones, but you're also more than welcome to go in and build your own detections. When you've got having the inbuilt ones when it's something new is a really good way to start. But as you become more familiar with the product and as you want to, as your customers come to you with like more requirements for detections, you can write your own as well. Just to give you a quick overview, as I said, Taka will dive into it. Essentially, as I was saying, the logs that come out of SAP are not in a good format for a SIEM to ingest, and therefore we put them through a Docker container. This Docker container, it can run on a VM, Kubernetes, cloud on-premise, we don't mind, and it formats the logs into a format that Sentinel can use. What is really cool as well, we can actually take from any SAP system within, it doesn't have to be an Azure one, it can actually run on any cloud or even SAP. As long as we can get those logs from your SAP up to that container to do that, what do we want to call it, like standardization or tidying up of those logs, and then that container can reach Sentinel, we can take from many different types of places. For the container, we do keep it secure. The creds are stored in Key Vault, of course. It would be ironic if we were deploying a security solution that in itself was insecure. But yeah, at the moment, I won't read them all out. You can see there in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got the log sources that we use from SAP at the moment. That will be expanded in the future. But we've got like a decent lot to get us going. So of course, some of the things that we can do with this cross correlation is detect things like, so cross correlation is important, as I said, because attackers don't just go for one system. So if we've got SAP logs, we've got things coming from Azure, we've got things coming from 365, we can see things like, if you've got a user that's doing some weird things in SAP, plus we can see that that account in the rest of the environment is also doing unusual activity, or they're communicating with command and control servers, which are obviously not a good thing, that will be definitely something we'd want to look at. Or if we can see something like user privilege have been escalated in SAP after an endpoint has been having some suspicious process execution with that said account. Again, that shows us that correlating between those two sources is definitely like someone doing using user privileges in SAP in itself is suspicious, but if we correlate that with that same user doing other suspicious things, it definitely shows us that the likelihood of something happening there is not good, and the likelihood that account's been breached is much increased. Just to give you an idea of the detection coverages, we've got things like suspicious privilege operations, the attempt to bypass SAP security mechanisms, which even if it's not a malicious attacker, is not something people should really be doing. Things like backdoor creation. So what we know as persistency. So sometimes an attacker won't just, as soon as they find something, they're not just going to go in immediately. It might be that they just create a backdoor and come back later, and they just monitor things for now. Yeah, so we have data exfiltration as well. When we pull the data out, of course, what's held within SAP can be very sensitive. And initial access is when someone actually tries to just get into the system to start with. So brute forcing, when they're trying to log in multiple times. We can see multiple logins from the same IP addresses, or multiple logins from different IP addresses within a short period of time can also be suspicious. But there's a way, using all these logs, we can get a really good, we can get a really good cross-section of potential suspicious activities. But this is the Sentinel. This is the Sentinel interface. If you haven't seen it before, I've just realised I'm in the wrong demo. So what I wanted to show you is when the logs come in. Again, you don't need to worry about this too much, but just to show you how the logs come in, we have lots of different tables. So if I do, I'll just show you what the logs look like from some of the SAP side of things. So if I just scroll down a little bit, we can see here that we have the logs coming in a nice consistent format. So we can see we have the time and date stamps, we have what user it was, what program name it was, what the message was, the message type. We can see the message text. Now, as I said, this consistency in logs is what we need to be able to run detections. So you can see all of this here coming in. So and after you've set up the container, this is how you see the log. So of course, then we can use our query language to be able to search through them. We use Custo query language. It's used in other Microsoft products as well. If you're not familiar with it, it is super easy to pick up, and we have heaps of training material on it. It's used throughout Microsoft security products and within other parts of Microsoft land, so it's definitely worth picking up. But I'll just show you, this is very much here's one I made earlier. I did not mean to click that button. I will just show you my other demo here. So what we have, the reason I'm coming here is because I'm going to deploy something for you. So what we do in Sentinel is we have something called Content Hub, and I've just realized I need to zoom in again. What we have here is our Content Hub, and this is where we have many different solutions in here, and this is where you could automatically deploy all the bits for a particular solution. So if I show you here, I'm going to click on the Sentinel one, and you can see here we've got Sentinel continuous monitoring for SAP. So what it has in here is it will show you, this will deploy the entire SAP solution within Sentinel. So what that means is it's going to deploy the detection rules, it's going to deploy the workbooks, which are a way of visualizing the logs, and we just make it nice and easy by, I'll just click create here. It will take me to picking, of course, a subscription and a resource group and the log analytics workspace. Next, we can review the connectors. In this side, this is just in here. We're just actually installing the Sentinel side of things. This won't do the Docker container setup and the SAP side of things, which Taka will talk about in a minute. it will then give us the opportunity to change the name of the workbooks, the visualization tools we're going to have. To be honest with you, I'm not going to change the name of them. There's no point. And then it will also give me a rundown of the analytics rules that are going to be installed here as well. So if you remember, the analytics rules are the detections. We also have watch lists as well. Watch lists are a way that you can dynamically update certain things for customers. So, for example, you can have privileged users. We can actually automate those watch lists being updated. So we could run a query saying, you know, maybe once a week saying, please return to me all the privileged users from this system. That will be updated in the watch list. And then our analytics rules can respond to that, which means that, of course, you don't have to constantly rewrite rules. What we had to do in the past was if you had a list of privileged users, you might have to hard code them into the detection and they'd need to be updated, which was, you know, of course, a real pain and time consuming. So you can see here, it's going to run the validation on this, as it will with all Azure things. And as you can see, the validation has passed, so I'm just going to click create. Now, this is a template. It's just going to run as an automated deployment here, and we can watch it run. Hopefully the demo gods will be kind to me this morning and this will work correctly. Fingers crossed. So we'll let that chug along for a moment, and then I will show you everything that's been created in the workspace, and then it's good to go. You've just got to get your logs in there as well. As you can see, here we go. We've got our workbooks that have been created. We've created our analytics rules. It's still going, but we'll just give it a second there. As you can see, the deployment has succeeded. So if I go back to my Sentinel instance now, I go to the workbooks and I search for SAP. You can see here, we've got my SAP workbooks here. They have been deployed successfully. If I now have a look at my analytics rules, and they're the detection rules, I can do exactly the same thing because there's lots of rules in here. But if I search for SAP, what we can see here is all these SAP rules have been deployed for me here as well. If we want to click on one, I'll just show you a couple of examples here. Here's an example. So they are fully customizable. You can absolutely customize these things any way you want. Even the inbuilt Microsoft ones, you can tweak them. So you can see here, we've this one is detecting the execution of a sensitive transaction code. Again, you can change the description. We also map it to the MITRE attack framework tactics. If you're not familiar with that, that's an industry-wide standard of mapping different attacker techniques and attacks. There's about 20 of them nowadays, I think. So this one comes under execution and discovery. You can change it if you disagree with us. And of course, you can change the severity as well. We have mapped this as a high severity, but if you or your customer don't agree with us, you are welcome to change it to something different. For the rule logic, you can see here we have the whole. This is the KQL. I'm not going to go through the KQL in detail here. That would take too long. But essentially, this is the rule that is looking through the data. Now you'll see I've got a lot of red just in this particular demo I'm showing you here. I'm flicking between a couple of different demos. The reason that it's giving me some errors here is it's telling me that this doesn't exist in the workspace, and that's true. This is just because I'm using some different demos. The demo that I have SAP data in, I don't want to redeploy the solution to, so I'm just using a fresh one that actually doesn't have SAP data. In a second, I'll show you what it looks like in something that has the data. But you can see here we've got the whole logic, and what you can do is you can actually test that with the data in your workspace. Of course, I can't do that at the moment. There's also some incident settings. I'm not going to go through these now, about how you can group different alerts. Again, it's just flexibility. We don't have right or wrong answers about how you do this. It's really going to depend on either your or your customer's security operations model. Here we've got the automated response. So in here, this is where you can attach an automated response. So we can say if this rule triggers, then you run this automation. So a very, very basic a very basic example of this would be, of course, alerting. As a minimum, we should be using the automation to alert. So you can send an email, post in Teams, post in Slack. Ideally, we'd want people to be doing some automation, some remediation as well, but it depends on you and your customer's level of security operations maturity as to if they've got that far. And then, of course, we can update that here as well if I wanted to make any changes. But just as I said, we've got things like, if I just show you a couple of these, execution of a sensitive function module, of course, yeah, that's, I don't think I need to explain why that could be bad. Sensitive user password change, of course, if someone's changing their password, if someone is changing their password regularly, a sensitive user, that's, you know, potentially suspicious. It could be that that account has been breached and they're going to change the password to lock somebody out of the account. We can see there's so many in here. Just as I said, I'm just giving you an example of some of them. The data has changed. I can't even read the rest of that rule. Data has changed during debugging activity. Of course, that's that could be suspicious. The one that I think is a classic, of course, is deactivation of the security log. What attackers will do is when they breach somewhere, they will attempt to cover up their tracks as best they can. So, of course, going and deactivating logging, any kind of logging and security trail and audit logs is a way they can do that. I will now, going back to my other workspace, I want to show you what some of these things look like in real life, because I have SAP logs in here. So looking at the workbooks here, I'll just get some of the SAP ones up. We'll just have a look at the suspicious, let's have a look at this one, initial access and attempts to bypass the security operations. So a workbook is something we use throughout Sentinel. It's not just for, it's definitely not just for SAP, but it can give you some, these workbooks that we provide can give you, when you've got the logs in, can give you some really great, really great visibility into what's going on. So for this initial access and attempts, we can see there's been multiple logons by these particular user IDs. Here's a particularly dodgy looking chap here. I think that might be Taka. He's been logging on far too much. We've also got brute force stuff that looks like it could be brute force as well. Logins by unexpected networks. Again, it's just another way, even if you don't raise an incident, it's a way of having a look at these sensitive actions. So we can see here, there's been some users executing sensitive transaction code and executing a sensitive function module. This is all within the last 90 days. You can change this time range. You can also change the different systems as well, because of course you can connect multiple systems to Sentinel. And it can have a look at all of them. It looks like good news. There's been no deactivation of logs in the last 90 days. So that's a good thing. And we can see if there's been any debugging and changes in this environment. There hasn't. But you get the idea of how we can really get, aside from the incidents, we can get a really good idea of what's happening by ingesting these logs. So we can see the number of logins over time. It's generally sort of about 4 or 5 a day, but it peaks here. We can see 7. Back in November, we had 8 folks logging in. Again, this is a demo environment, so I know in reality there'd probably be a lot more SAP users, but we can see how much we've ingested here for different systems as well. We can see what kind of severity events we've had. We've had a lot more low, which is good. We can also set a particular user here as well, in order to, if you wanted to drill down into a particular user and not just look at the whole system, that's possible as well. So it just gives us some really nice security. I'll just show you these two. There's another 2 as well, but we get some really nice visibility into what's happening in SAP land. I'll just quickly show you how you investigate and triage an incident in Sentinel, just in case you haven't seen it before. So What we have here is when a rule is triggered, it will create an incident. So the incident is found here. We can see here we've got a malicious credential theft tool has been detected. So we can see the alerts that have formed part of this incident. Sometimes there'll just be one alert, sometimes there'll be multiple. We can zoom in on that alert. We can have a look. We can see the description of the alert. We can see the entities involved. So we can see there's an end user here. Well, there's a host. We can see that there is an executable. There's various different Windows processes. We can also see if we have a look. I would also expect to see, I didn't want to do it that way, I wanted to stay in the UI. We can also see here, there's a lot of processes. There should be somewhere a user account, I would expect, maybe not, but these are all the entities that are involved. We can then also investigate this. So if we click on investigation, it takes us to the investigation graph pane, and now we can have a look here. I'll zoom in so people can see this. We can actually zoom in and have a look. This isn't displaying amazingly well just because I have actually zoomed in a bit. Let me zoom out. Maybe that will look a bit better, and I'll zoom in. But we can see here, it will give us, from this alert, we will get all the related processes and hosts. So what I can do here is, if I have a look at the different entities, we can actually use this to zoom in. So if I can see here, here's our victim PC, our host. So what I can do is if I hover over there, it will actually give me other things that I can actually look out for that particular host. So for here, I can see related alerts to this victim PC. Now, it's actually got a lot of other alerts. So we've got the Mimikatz, which is the one that we saw before, but we can also see that there's an automated investigation started. That's been started by Defender for Endpoint. They've also had some stop commands issued outside maintenance again. So basically we can see that I would say the conclusion I've come to here is that there is definitely something happening with, there's definitely something not right with this host. So again, obviously I could dig into this more and more. I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to, but you know, there's a lot of different things we can do here, and with an SAP incident, it would come up exactly the same. We're also able to record and add notes into this. We can assign an owner, and we can also, if a customer is using a third-party ticketing system, if they're using ServiceNow or something like that, we can actually have a sync between that as well. So even if they're doing the investigation and writing notes, if their main way of tracking this is in a third-party ticketing system, we can absolutely support that as well. That's probably everything that I wanted to show you on the Sentinel side. As I said, this was kind of talking about the SAP side of Sentinel, plus just giving you a quick introduction to the product, just in case you hadn't seen it before. With that, I will hand over to my most esteemed colleague, Taka, who is going to talk you through actually the SAP side of things as well, and how you would go about installing this. So Taka, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good work on the presentation and demo. I'm switching over to my screen. This is Taka from SAP on Azure Customer Engine team at Microsoft. I'm doing SAP solution at Microsoft for 21 years, so which is my dedication for a partner in the solution space. So my section is going to be a little bit more technical, deep dive, and how to, in addition to why, because we are talking with partners. So I'm going to spend approximately 35 minutes, to be respectful of time, to cover two topics. One is a pilot setup, that's one, and two is demonstration to your stakeholder. Firstly, I'm getting into how you as a partner can successfully set up a solution end-to-end from SAP to Sentinel, just in 1 week. So here's one slide summarizing the procedure of a solution setup, a pilot setup. First, SAP is a source. Second, SAP data connector VM is a bridge or connector. And Sentinel is obviously the destination and the place where security monitoring is done. So first of all, SAP, I put some note in a purple color. Here in the top right corner, let me just zoom in a little bit. So, in each side of this, PowerPoint slide, PowerPoint presentation, I'm gonna keen to explain who should cover the setup. That's one, and also the level of implementation. Is it easy or rather difficult or moderate? And also typical time to complete setup, just to kind of make it useful for a partner who implement the solution. So in this slide, it is going to be SAP Basis team who checked SAP Basis version in use in your SAP system. And also, it is again the SAP Basis team who is going to check whether your SAP already have required fixes or SAP nodes. The task is fairly easy for those who know SAP Basis. For recent SAP S/4HANA ERP system, node installation, patching is likely to be 0. For it may take up to kind of half day or day to patch all the SAP ERP system. And the next slide to SAP. Your SAP Basis expert may need to install SAP change requests, which are custom SAP program that Microsoft built and provide as part of Sentinel SAP Connect. The task again are pretty easy for those who are familiar with SAP Basis expert. The installation should complete in a few hours. By the way, your SAP system, I think we got a few questions on this. Your SAP system may be running on-premises or any non-Azure data center or cloud on legacy platform like Unix or mainframe, AS400, or older version of Windows and Linux. And database can be Oracle, DB2, ASC, not just SAP HANA, MSSQL as well. And SAP, SAP can be non-Unicode version, which is still supported by SAP, but latest recommendation from SAP is a Unicode version, but we cover non-Unicode version as well. So this solution that we are talking about right now should be able to cover such a legacy SAP system, regardless of the place where your SAP system is hosted right now. So in case you can find an SAP system somewhere in your network, I think that should be easy. That should be the first pilot system that you may want to touch. What if you cannot find any SAP system? For those who are not very familiar with SAP, SAP installation can be a little bit tricky. So in case, if that is the case, in case you don't have any SAP environment around you, you can actually download previewed SAP pilot environment to Azure from SAP Cloud Appliance Library. We call it SAP CAL. SAP CAL is never meant to set up any production system, pre-production system, or quality assurance system. It is to set up pilot, demo, sandbox system. The real value is that you don't need to set up any SAP application and underlying OS and database system at all. Simply download previous system images from SAP Cloud Appliance Library so that you can proceed with this pilot. So let me quickly show you. Again, this is not needed if you have any SAP system in a network. If you want to download the previewed image from SAP library, you can do this through this calsap.com. So in the solution, you can search by SAP. Sorry, it's obviously this is SAP library, so everything SAP images. But you can find a number of previewed images on this library, which can be used for a download to Azure. Most of the images available on Azure. This is maintained and supported by SAP. And this is free of charge for SAP customer for the first 30 days. So you can literally download the SAP images directly down to your Azure subscription. Next, SAP Data Connector VM. As I said, SAP Data Connector VM is a bridge between SAP and Sentinel. While the connector runs in a Docker container, maybe someone can, okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so while the connector runs in a Docker container, we currently recommend customer partner to run it in a Linux VM. So in future, we may support running the connector on a major Kubernetes platform, but that's for future. After deploying the VM before running the installation shell script that we provide, please make sure it has connectivity to SAP, Azure Keyboard, Azure AD, and Sentinel Workspace. So I'm just showing a data connector VM with Docker here. It needs a connectivity to all of them. The connector VM connects to SAP with a protocol named SAP RFC, Remote Function Call. It is going to use a TCP 3200, 3300, 50,013, the TCP number, which may change depending on your SAP instance numbering. In order for VM to speak such a protocol, application protocol, RFC SDK library need to be downloaded from SAP website before running installation script. Azure Keyboard is needed for VM to securely store credential, such as system user, its password for SAP, and Sentinel Workspace ID, etc., to be able to connect SAP and Sentinel Workspace for log ingest. Because the VM itself is very likely to be protected by your firewall solution, like an NBA Network Virtual Appliance or Azure Firewall. Please check out all the detail in the link here to find the connectivity detail. This setup will be joint effort between Azure Infra team, security team, and SAP Basis team. The installation is well documented here in the documentation, and installation should complete in a few hours because it's fairly easy and pretty mature. After running installation script in the VM, you'll be asked to put all the input for SAP Data Connector. As a result, everything you have given is stored in either system config INF file, which is local file in Docker VM, or Azure Keyboard. If you look at system config INI, you can find all the log ingest configuration. So I think we got the one question on how we can control or reduce, how we can select the log ingest, to be able to control the cost or optimize the cost. You can definitely reduce ingestion as needed. By default, all the log ingestion are enabled. So, this section is going to be, mostly true, but you can change this INF file. Then you can change to false for further not required for pilot, so that cost can be fully under control. I think I can quickly switch to kind of short demo. I think let me kind of go back to kind of PowerPoint just a little bit to talk about Azure Keyboard for SAP Data Connector VM. Because this Data Connector VM, you need to be fully secure because we are talking about security solution. So Azure Keyboard is used to store all the critical credential data for both SAP and Sentinel. Data Connector VM use the Azure Managed Identity, or we call it MSI, to securely collect the credential to be able to connect both SAP and Sentinel. Let me quickly kind of show you, what I'm talking about on Azure keyboard. So you can manually create a keyboard by appropriate the team, or you can follow our documentation to run CLI or script to be able to create, not only keyboard for this SAP data connector, but also to create a secret. I'm just switching to a secret and kind of showing you NPL above pass and user, these credential to be able to connect SAP, and also NPL log, WSID, and public key. This is for connector VM to be able to connect a Sentinel, because this is a bridge. And also some, security log, Sentinel SAP data connector need a credential to be able to connect the, underlying OS of SAP application, SAP servers. So let me kind of quickly click. I'm not showing enough anything critical here, but just inside the secret of this Azure keyboard, I keep the current latest version of key. I think in this case, it's our pass, which is kind of password for the system user for data connector VM to securely connect to SAP with a minimum privilege. Let's not use SAP star like a super user, because it's obviously a ridiculous thing for us to do for security monitoring. And also, in this demo system, Sarah already kind of show you some of the end user perspective. On the backend side, I'm kind of hosting one Docker VM, which is Linux, Ubuntu, with D2DSB4, which is pretty tiny VM. It's not the large VM like Azure, SAP HANA system is in this Ring 1. I'm tentatively using E4SB3 because I am using some SAP AC database. I can kind of go with smaller VM. If you want to test HANA system, your VM need to be much larger, as you may know, to be certified by SAP. And this SAP2 is kind of Jambox Windows Server, Windows kind of VM, which is again D2B3. So in this demo, the VM which are up and running backend is pretty minimum and pretty reasonable. Okay, so let me go into the Docker data connector VM. So again, kind of showing you kind of console for the kind of Linux VM, again, a small VM. I am running Docker package here, SAP con NPL here. Then this system config INI is a critical parameter file to put all the configuration file. So let me take a look. I hope you can see the some of the parameters that I put, which is put in this INI file, which includes AS first for the destination SAP system kind of IP as a connection detail, system number. And as you can see, all these password and user ID, which kind of critical security credential. So it's not here in this local file. Instead, we use Azure keyboard. Okay. And another critical thing which you can find in this INI file is kind of log ingest configuration, kind of true or false. I would say ABAP audit log is always pretty popular and tend to be the starting point for many pilot customer. So I put true. Some other log, like syslog, ICN, work process and gateway. I put the false to kind of begin with. I can enable, I can change them to true if the our stakeholder is interested in this specific log ingest. But first of all, I think many partners may want to start small, so that you can control log ingest, which log to pick in this INF file. I'm just kind of quickly going back to kind of PowerPoint and just checking the time as well. So SAP Data Connector has a logging mode, real-time logging mode of the connector. So as you can see, the connector in this screenshot successfully connected both SAP and Sentinel. Otherwise, it clearly dump error message every minute, data ingestion, or a variety of SAP logs is done per configuration file, as I discussed, as I explained in the previous slide. For example, stool log, which is a print log, or job log, body log, again popular, and many other log. And it replaces only data, not entire record or log since the last ingestion, so that you can minimize the impact to the backend SAP system. Let me again quickly kind of show you real-time logging mode. I can come back here after I do some operation on the SAP side to kind of show you every minute the connector is doing delta data retrieve to Sentinel. Maybe I can kind of go back just a little bit because I did some warm up prior to this demo. So as you can see, our audit log, connector found delta since the last data retrieve. So just kind of picking only delta and sending, ingesting to a Sentinel workspace. We are finally on the Sentinel side. I think as Sarah already mentioned, just start with Content Hub to install SAP, all the SAP security monitoring packages that we provide to set up a custom log, analytics rule, watch list, workbook, etc. in your Sentinel workspace. As Sarah already demonstrated, Sentinel's log menu is always kind of first place for you to quickly check if SAP logs have actually touched down to your Sentinel workspace, and you can use these log menus. You can select star, or you can select all from SAP custom log, as Sarah already demonstrated, or you can use a sample queries that I put in the in the PowerPoint slide that we are going to share with a partner. So the result set is going to look more meaningful. Let me quickly kind of show you what logs is going to look like. So yeah, in the logs menu again, you can find the custom log view. Right. So once SAP Security Monitoring package is installed in the workspace, you are going to see a number of kind of custom logs for SAP. So these are custom logs, starting with ABAP, ABAP. So let's say, ABAP audit log. You can do a quick preview to quickly see if data exists in the workspace. There's some time lag between connector and Sentinel workspace, so please be a little bit careful, but it should be done pretty quickly. So again, you can write let me just go back to you can simply run select star. last 24 hours, in this case. Or I included some sample query so that for our security audit log, you can use, you can kind of copy and paste this sample query so that I am doing adding some fair clause to be able to be the pinpoint that I am looking for. Right. Log on successful, which is not super critical, security event, but like you can come back later. These are a bunch of useful sample log, sample query, KQL or Custo query, so that you're going to find audit log, application log, change document log, spool log, job log, which are all pretty critical SAP logs that you may want to monitor. Okay. So once you finish this initial setup, let's say in a week or two, let's talk about how you can successfully demonstrate this solution and its whole value to your stakeholder or your customer as a partner. So again, one slide summary of all the preparation needed of what to do for demonstration. SAP, Data Connector VM, and Sentinel. We are now in demonstration mode. Okay, starting with SAP. First of all, in SAP, you may want to simulate all the suspicious or somehow risky or dangerous things that you can imagine from a security perspective. So this is kind of a little bit tricky part, like penetration test for SAP. So this is to see how Sentinel can effectively detect these security events in a very timely manner. So I would surely suggest to run this test operation, as you can see here, in the non-production system first, please. Test operation will include SAP logon failure or duplicate multiple logon, which are pretty famous for SAP security expert, and also the SAP audit log change, privilege assignment, data browsing, download, print. These should be immediately detected as a potential security threat for sure. Let me quickly demo what these tests would look like in SAP. So I'm switching over to the SAP GUI and the user interface screen. So what I'm trying to do is doing some logon failure. This is an initial window of SAP GUI. For those who are not familiar with SAP, no worry. This should be done by your SAP basis team. I'm gonna use a test 04, and I intentionally failed with the logon. That's one, and also I have existing session as a test 02, a test 04, an existing session. I am intentionally doing multiple logon here. So this is alerting. This is the alert or warning from SAP application. I'm gonna continue with this logon without ending the existing logon in the system. So this is kind of critical security threat for many customers, but depending on the configuration of SAP, this may be possible. Okay. Again, I am doing all the ridiculous and dangerous things, on purpose. Okay. So I'm gonna use existing session to do to run SAP, some of the SAP transaction. So SM20 is SAP above audit log. So I'm gonna sneak in this audit log, which is very scary. And also I'm gonna run another transaction, OSAP, RSAU underscore config. This is again, administrator or it can be attacker may want to configure and change these logging itself, audit log itself. So I can edit. I can kill the entire audit log, or I can disable some of the audit log, like here. Because I am using test04, which is a super user. So there are some cases where attacker may do it on purpose. Again, this is for kind of test operation for security monitoring. I'm gonna do SU01 for the user management. I'm gonna change not only these attribute, but also I can add some admin profile here. This is again going to give you some example that the attacker may want to sneak in the system to do something suspicious, something dangerous for your security environment. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak in the table directly, and I may want to do a printing, which may sound a little bit legacy, but this is still gonna scary. And also I can do download. You can imagine this is a customer table, then you don't want to disclose such a sensitive data outside of SAP. So my point here is, whether Sentinel SAP connector is able to detect such a security threat that I did. This is possible, within SAP system for sure. Like, I am showing a SAP audit log. Then if I, open the audit log, then I need to sort. All the suspicious thing is visible only in SAP audit log, which is fine. And okay for SAP, team. But security team, SOC team, and Azure Infra team, and all the other the team do not have access to this SAP audit log, which is a problem, and also the can be the risk. So we can revisit this Sentinel SAP connector. So this is real time. So it is now kind of showing audit log detected the delta. So it is doing data ingest to Sentinel. You are going to see spool log and also other log also kind of showing up in this connector in kind of debugging and logging mode. And also as you are going to see, I think can switch to the last hour, for example. But thanks to this Sentinel SAP connector, your security team, SOC team, and Sentinel admin team may find, they are able to find all the SAP application level audit log, here in the Sentinel workspace. So data exists, data is replicated to a Sentinel as well, thanks to this connector. Yeah, now I can see the spool log here, and also change document log as well. I'm just going back to the kind of PowerPoint, and again, kind of checking the time. Yeah, so Sentinel, analytics rule and watch list. definition of security threat is very different from customer to customer. So can I change the watch list of SAP transaction to monitor? The answer is yes. So with Sentinel and SAP connector, you can fast track utilizing tens of pre-built analytics rule and watch list that the Microsoft Security and SAP expert have built in this product, and also have enhanced per customer feedback, including Microsoft Digital, Microsoft also end user of SAP, and also this solution. We get such a feedback from a customer. Workbooks again, a bunch of previewed templates of security dashboards that run on top of integrated ingested SAP logs that you have set up so far. You may want to edit the workbooks or create a new ones per your needs. Also, incident is another way not only to monitor threat, but also to take action with incident management. Let me quickly kind of show you the incident. Yeah, I can see that all the SAP related incident. So this will be addition to the set of the demonstration. So yeah, I'm actually seeing number of incident in this Microsoft Sentinel. So let's say execution of sensitive transaction code. By the way, I have a definition for a sensitive transaction code in this system. So I think it's in. Yeah, it's actually in watch list. Sensitive transaction here. So these two, the bottom two, these are value which is already included in the initial setup of Sentinel connector. I have added 3 transactions like SC16 and also SM20, for this demonstration. So this is customizable. And I'm just kind of switching back to the incident. Let's say execution of sensitive transaction code. I think this visualization may not be as pretty as what the Sarah already kind of demonstrated. But this is again kind of visualization. Who are running such a sensitive SAP transaction, which is actually me. But I can security team can track what's going on in this kind of query system as well. And also you can kind of go back to instance and you can assign owner. It's a little bit weird to assign this instance to me, but you can use Sentinel as an instance management system to take action, not only integrating with your existing instance system. I think we are pretty close to handing over to Aaron, but let me kind of finish my last few slides. So one of the frequent asked question is the cost of distribution. After its 30-day free trial period, Sentinel cost is based on its data ingest volume, which is often very hard to estimate in advance. Volume may vary depending on your SAP login configuration on SAP, and also number of logs that the SAP data connector ingest per your INI configuration file, as I explained. So here's a sample query to track exact ingest volume size. So I kind of put some kind of computer name, and as you can see, I think for this SAP HANA audit log, it's one of the logs that we can do. It is 141 megabyte per month. And you can quickly calculate how much it's gonna cost, for the next phase. SAP NetWeaver that I demonstrated, it's only 4 megabyte per month. This is a screenshot from the demonstration system that I'm kind of showing right now. So again, the volume may vary, but you can check by yourself so that you can start small. How can I start small by minimizing the cost? You can enable log ingest one by one, turn off unnecessary one first, and after initial test, check ingest volume using the query and calculate the potential cost. Never try to size a code as ingest volume can vary as always. Leverage 1 month Sentinel free trial to maximum. You're likely to need 1 or 2 weeks to complete setup and initial demo and test. You still have 2 weeks. I'm also sure that the Sentinel costs are going to be almost negligible as compared to what you're paying for SAP HANA and its infrastructure. For the benefit of adding Sentinel versus just using log analysis alone, I think it's I think we are talking about customer partner reusing predefined threat detection and incident management packages that the Microsoft Security and SAP expert team provide in the product, or versus partner can do all the DIYs to build a query, repos, dashboard, etc. on top of all these telemetry. I think the question here is, do you have all the expertise not to do them wrong? And lastly, how can I maximize value proposition for stakeholder? So I would say combine with other data sources for the monitoring, like an OS, Linux, Windows, HANA, relational database, storage, MBA. Sentinel is not just for SAP, like other solutions are. And also you can consider other security solution, like integrated the single sign-on, not only for SAP, NetWeaver, but also Fiori, multi-factor authentication, web application file, DDoS protection, encryption policy setting, all of them is a whole set of value proposition of Azure Security Platform for SAP. So now I am going to hand this over to Aaron. Aaron, are you there?
I am here. I'm not sure what my finger issue is or what the deal is with getting off of mute and getting the camera turned back on. Yes, thank you, Taka. Thank you, Taka, Sarah, Everin, and Benil. That's been great information, great demos. Appreciate that. I am going to switch over to my screen, hopefully, here in just a second. You all can see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Apologize again for that. So we've heard a lot of great information. You've got the background on Sentinel, why we're doing SAP monitoring on Sentinel. And basically, as I kicked off in the intro, I manage our SAP security team here at Microsoft. So my responsibility is the application security for the enterprise. And so with that comes approximately right now we have 15 production systems, as you can see in the deck here, but we actually have well over 100 prod and non-prod systems that will ultimately be monitored by Sentinel over the coming, I'll just say months, maybe a little bit longer, but effectively we'll be monitoring all non-prod and prod systems in the future. But effectively, we have the same challenges, same needs, and I'll just say risk issues, et cetera, as most of your partners, customers, et cetera, have today. So for us, we were looking for a way to streamline how we manage our space, how we identify new threats, risk types, et cetera, threat actors, and so forth, just like any other company. And our previous process and tools, although were effective, helped us basically manage those risks as they are today. They weren't very scalable in the sense of a consolidated, efficient, I'll say, capability or framework. So with that, we partnered closely with the Azure team, Microsoft Sentinel team, more specifically in this discussion, on opportunities to leverage, I'll say, our platform engineering group within Microsoft Engineering, Microsoft Digital as we're known, to basically come up with capabilities, scenarios that you've seen through the previous demos to help us solve our problem and enable a scalable solution that not only addresses our near-term needs and risks, but also will work with us to basically scale to meet future threats and risks. So basically a dynamic solution. So with that, we basically moved ahead within the last year. It's been less than a year actually since we initiated this effort to basically define critical risks for us that we wanted to start out with and build a baseline or foundation. We went live in September with, again, 15 production systems, including our SOC systems, and deployed over 27 scenarios, many of which you actually heard in the previous discussions or demos. We're continuing to work closely with the Microsoft Sentinel team and our other internal partners to define additional scenarios and continuing to roll out new scenarios as part of our effort. So a lot of, I'll say, current risk mitigation, current monitoring activity, and then growth in the monitoring sense is what we're currently focused on. With that being said, one of the other elements of implementing or improving our CM or monitoring capability is also how to operationalize it. So we've been working very closely again with the same group of people and other engineering teams within Microsoft to identify ways to optimize how we operationalize and use the tool most effectively. Just to give you some rough numbers here, as mentioned, we went live in about September timeframe. We have had about 8.6 million events in our Sentinel environment to date. Of course, not all of those events are, I'll just say, real or high risk. There's a lot of false positives. There's things that we're learning and tuning as we go. So one of our core focuses right now is I have a team of resources working on how to optimize our use of Sentinel so we can focus on critical risks, the actual events that are top priority, and then building the information and logic around that optimization into playbooks and or other documents that can be consumed by the customer and our partners. So our goal is to optimize for ourselves as customer zero, learn and then also document our learnings for others to leverage and optimize their implementations. So big focus on both scenario development and also operationalization, with a focus on Microsoft as customer zero, kind of the test bed, if you will, and then leveraging those learnings again for our customers and partners. So basically looking to share. Okay. With that, we have an ongoing roadmap to expand some of our capabilities into the business in the near future. So you heard, I think, some examples earlier. One of the areas we're focusing on, in addition to just core SAP platform monitoring, is also looking at high-risk business scenarios, critical actions, et cetera, within the business space. So correlation, as mentioned earlier, is critical path for us. That was one of the key drivers for us to have that ability to look at what is being done by a user in Dynamics, for example, versus what they're doing in SAP. And so a scenario earlier, just to kind of tie out in our world, in a sense, if you look from an SAP security perspective, is if you have an actor or an employee, a user, basically creating a payee in Dynamics, for example, and then goes into SAP and initiates a payment to that payee, it kind of, I'll say, is a classic fraud scenario. There's different ways and means that people can get created in the system as a payee. And then there's also obviously different teams are responsible, the segregation of duties to make those payments, release the payments, et cetera. So we're looking at the business scenarios and prioritizing those as part of this effort as well. And that will be part of our upcoming roadmap. And then last but not least is the data analytics and automated remediation. That's also key. You heard a bit about that earlier as well. That was another driver for us in our implementation, is having the ability to not just identify things that have happened using the logs and the detailed data within those log files in a very, I'll just say, usable, consumable way, but it's also about how can we leverage AI and I'll say advanced analytics, and then using that data in the, I'll just say, artificial intelligence to perform actions in the system as well. So basically, creating a resilient, I'll say, security platform for our SAP environment and enterprise environment on Azure. So those are the key, I'll just say, activities, opportunities, learnings, and looking ahead we, like any company, have challenges that we're continuously evolving and learning and growing from. And as we work with the product group, we're providing that feedback into the group real time. So the great tight partnership between our SAP engineering organization within the so Microsoft Digital or our IT group, and then the product group helping us to basically solve those problems. So much of the information you saw earlier is directly applicable to the work that we've done in partnership across the internal organization.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention. I know 90 minutes is quite a long session, so thanks for sticking with us. In terms of the kind of summary and call to action or go-dos, if you're thinking of doing this, or implementing Sentinel, the Sentinel solution in SAP, make sure you plan well. Talk to the SAP and the security team. We do have a 1-month free trial for Sentinel. If you're just using it for SAP, unless you've got an insane amount of stuff, you're unlikely to go over the free trial limit, which is, I think it's 10 gig a day now. Don't quote me on that. It's 5 or 10 gig a day. But basically for the first 31 days that you have Sentinel turned on a workspace, as long as you don't hit that limit, everything's free to ingest. So it's really easy to do a POC. Microsoft really wants to help you folks do this. Obviously, there's plenty of support out there. If you need help, or you need assistance from Microsoft, please reach out to your contacts, and if they're not the right person, they will get the right person. We do have there are public recordings of how to install this solution in our tech community as well, so you can also reference those for your customers or reference them again after this session. We'd really like to help you get POCs up and running. Also, we love your feedback as well, because that's how we make the product better. And there's a lot of Sentinel material out there, so if there's so much of it, I can't even list it all. So if you're struggling to find what you need, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help. And thanks everyone, and thanks very much for your attention. Hopefully you found that interesting. As I said, I know 90 minutes is a long time. I think it's over to Binal for the next bit.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. So this is the last session of our Q&A, and I have a couple of slides to share with you. So before I close this event with a couple of slides, please complete the survey. I assume it was just posted in the chat window. It is important to know your feedback on our Secure SAP on Azure initiative at Worldwide. There are some interesting questions in the survey that may catch your attention, and we are looking forward to reading your response. Based on your response, we have more opportunity to connect with you in the future. So let's move on to the next slide. This is about the key partner advantages. Please move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So this is about the professional services opportunity for partners, right? I think I just wanted to really keep in mind, SAP is well known for his customizability. So this is a great advantage and opportunity for partners to really blend security into that nature, so that you have a unique proposition to the end customer to support SAP's customizability and how do we really protect the system from a long-term standpoint. So being custom, high touch, and high expertise, that's what I was meaning from that customizability standpoint. The second one is a differentiator, right? Using Azure Security as a key value proposition to drive a migration opportunity for your customer, and then use that as a critical, priority for customer to understand. So that's another angle you need to look at from a what's the advantage for partner when you blend Azure Security for SAP migration. The third one is the Salesforce multiplier. That's an interesting element, because you see when you deal with a customer and you are dealing with their SAP organization, or maybe the business unit that needs SAP all up, plus the security organization, which is including the CISO and the entire organization. So you have an opportunity to really showcase the big picture of the customer business running on SAP system, plus how do we protect the system through security and cloud security particularly. So that's we call a multiplier. You're connecting with business unit, you're connecting with the security organization of your customer to really have a better impact for their business, as well as protecting their environment. And third one, the last one is development of use cases. And like us, I think many of the such use cases discussed in the previous sessions in the demo by Sarah, Takeyuki, and everyone here. So detection, playbook, workbook, etc. So you can have it more developed in your SOC operation, for example, and use it that to demonstrate for your new customer to walk in. So that's a great opportunity as a system integrator for SAP and security. So the next one I wanted to really talk about the partner go-to-market roadmap. So this is an important one. So we want partners to take advantage of this opportunity and expand your Microsoft security practice around SAP. And here is the high-level roadmap to begin or accelerate your journey with us. The first, build offering. Now, you understand potential SAP and Azure opportunities and customer scenarios. You can decide the scope of the services offering or capabilities that you want to develop or incorporate with your existing managed services offering. You can then publish them on the Azure Marketplace. Please work with your Microsoft Partner Development Manager and Partner Technology Strategist to develop offering and publish them onto the Azure Marketplace. The second step is to generate demand. You may consider targeting customers based on the migration and modernization opportunities based on the scenario we discussed earlier. You can then plan demand generation events to create awareness about native Azure security controls to protect SAP system. You can also conduct a dedicated Microsoft Sentinel campaign for SAP customer for creating an upsell opportunity pipeline for you. The third step is to accelerate co-sell with Microsoft. This is a very important one. SAP on Azure is a key priority for our Microsoft application and infrastructure solution sellers. They are keen to work with partners to build joint pipeline for SAP on Azure. They want to partner to lead the security conversation for pre-sales conversation, for example. I really encourage you to connect with your partner development manager in your area and request him or her to connect you with apps and infra sellers to accelerate co-sell motion. Please take note, building offering on the Azure Marketplace is a key milestone for Microsoft sellers to engage with you. So I appreciate if you can prioritize building offering and publishing them to the marketplace as soon as possible. So let's move on to some of the call to action. The first thing I want to really highlight is the incorporate Azure Security Control in your standard SAP on Azure migration blueprint, because this is very important. I'm sure you may have a blueprint ready which you use to migrate customer to Azure. So make sure security is incorporated into it so that you can use security as a leading conversation to enable cloud transformation. Second, work with Microsoft Partner Development Managers and Partner Technology Strategists to build services as well as publish them to Azure Marketplace. And the third one is build joint SAP on Azure pipeline with Microsoft application and infrastructure sellers. So that's the very specific key to action I would like to highlight your attention. So that's all we have from this Airlift. And thanks to you, your valuable time and participation. We are looking forward to supporting your business success, and we will stand by to answer your question for the next almost 5 minutes. So please feel free to send your question to the chat window, and all participants will receive the presentation material and resources. One last request again, please provide your feedback, the survey. We appreciate your feedback. Have a wonderful day.